Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of The Chord. Now on The Chord we have for you a fantastic performer. Let me tell you, one of the best I've ever heard when it comes to a voice. A bassist who's absolutely brilliant. You don't know who I'm talking about? Of course you won't, with a lot of bassists there in the market today. But let me tell you, he started playing in a group called The Police as the vocalist and the bassist, eventually known as Sting. Well, we have for you Sting right here on The Chord, and this is going to be an excellent episode, not only right through this week but right through the month. If you're a fan of The Chord and fan of Sting, here is what we have for you in store. Now, Sting is one of those guys, when you hear him play anywhere, you know, because his voice is just so brilliant. I mean, I don't know how to put his voice anywhere else. Is there any other adjective I can use? I probably can, but I do not know how to do this for one reason. He is just brilliant. As a human being, he's fantastic. As a singer, he's even better. As a bassist, he's even better than that. The thing about Sting is that he keeps on working, and he produces music that is so different from anything else. If you listen to every breath you take, and then you listen to what he's done when it comes to Roxanne, and then you listen to something else called Desert Rose, there's no comparison in the music. It's absolutely different genres altogether. But that's what he does. Sting is Sting, and that's what we have for you on The Chord. Sting is not one of those guys who started off early as knowing as to where he wanted to be. He was in an industrial estate where they were making ships. One day he saw the Queen passing by and realized he wanted to break out of this thing and become someone better. There's a friend of his who's an immigrant who left a Spanish guitar back, and he was obsessed with it, decided to take it and play it. And then the family knew that Sting was going to be Sting, if not at least someone who was going to be interested in music for the long term. Now, what is it about the Sting that made him Sting? Everybody asks the same question. Is this something that's happened by chance? So people ask me, and even I ask myself, as to how did he get the name? Well, when he was very young, he was playing with a band. And when he started playing with the band, he used to go around wearing, it's the 1970s of course, wearing this black sweater with this yellow polka dotted thing that he used to wear around his neck that made him look like a bee. So people went and calling him the bee. When it happened to that, he said, really, do I look like a bee? He said, no. He thought he looked exactly like a wasp. And that's what we came and told him, you look like a Gabriel, a wasp, a bee. What are you going to call yourself? He said, well, in the future, I'll call myself Sting. Now, when he started off, he started as Police, of course, playing the bass, but he was so fantastic. They had the punk style of playing. Eventually, it went to reggae. And when you hear the kind of sounds that they produce once after the other, you can understand there was this kind of, well, development in the band itself. You could call it maybe a progressive way. Well, maybe also it was the fact that they started evolving more than anything else. And eventually, it come to a point where even though they were doing very well, they decided to do one thing, go ahead and kind of get their solo careers in place. If that did not have to happen, maybe Sting we would never hear. But that's the whole point about a person like this man. Now, what is the real name? I'll tell you when we come back. But this man, you and me know as Sting, but of course he's also known as one of the guys who started the Police. Gordon Matthew Thomas Sumner. Now, that is his name. Whose name? Well, Sting's name. Can you imagine having such a big name coming down to just 5 alphabets called S-T-I-N-G? Well, that's what he's all about. Now, Sting didn't start the way out he was. Well, when he started, he was working in, not only his father was working in one of these places where you make these ships. So, very big time industrial estate, a lot of metal there, cold in England, as you can imagine, and it was not a nice place to be. Well, while he was there, apparently, there was a day when the Queen Mother, Elizabeth, decided to travel right through. And while that happened, he was there looking at her and she was waved at him, and he realized this is not the place you want to be. He finally realized that there's more to life than just being in that estate. What happened eventually was an immigrant friend of his who was playing the guitar, started playing the guitar. He turned to the left and said, oh my God, what is that? He said, well, this is a guitar I'm going to leave back for you. Sting picked up the guitar and everything changed for him. Now, when you hear songs like Roxanne, it touches you into a place where you realize that this is the lyrics written by a man who knows what he's talking about. Of course, every breath you take, it is such an epic song. Roxanne, an epic song. Why is it so great? Because it touches something in you and you know for a fact that it means something. SOS is another song that's absolutely brilliant. But what is it about Sting that changes people when you listen to him? Well, because he's also a man who totally believes the earth has to be saved. The amount of work he's doing when it comes to saving people's lives, animals' lives, the planet itself has been seen to be believed. Not only him, his wife as well. But that's what probably makes Sting different. When you come to your peak and playing in a band like Police, you understand one thing, that when you're on a peak, you don't stop there, you keep on going. Every band does that. But imagine a man like Sting coming and saying, let's take a hiatus, let's figure out what we really want in our solo careers and then see if we can get back together at all. They did this in 1985. Never came back till 2007. In 2007, they came back as Police and went on a world tour. After they disbanded again, saying, hey, this is what we want to do. That's one thing about a guy like Sting. He knows what is right at the right time, and to do that means you are professional on a different level altogether. Sting, what can you say? Now, Sting is one of the most prolific singers, songwriters, and one of the biggest influences in music today came from him, from the Yardbirds, when he used to go and watch them in bars like the Go-Go, sit down, watch them playing. He really got inspired from them, but he also got inspired from a lot of jazz. And so when he started growing up, he realized that music is what he wanted to do. Started going and playing in various pubs, but he used to really play the bass. Now, one thing, how he got his name Sting is basically, again, a bit of trivia. I talked about it last week, but if you missed it, let me tell you again how this thing happened. He used to wear this sweater that had yellow and black stripes right across it with a turtleneck, which also had yellow around it. So people looked at him and said, I think you look more like a bee. Somebody went and said he looks like a wasp. Eventually, with everything coming together, he said, well, my name is Sting. Born as Gordon Sumner, his name eventually would become Sting. But then when he was born in this area, which is basically a huge shipyard that does a lot of work on ships. So it was really dreary, this part of England, which is Northumbria. Realized that he didn't have much to do in that place. And then eventually one day, he would stand beside the road and see the Queen pass by in a motorcade, and then realize he wanted to break out the shell and become someone famous. Now, with a voice like his, he was going to become famous anyway. But when he started singing, he thought he wanted to do jazz for a very long time. Before that, said, okay, I'm going to do one thing. He went to this pub and he started auditioning as a punk band. From there, he went to jazz. And from jazz, they eventually went and started playing reggae. Now, this is when the band Police was formed. Now, after being in a band like Police and playing songs like Every Breath You Take, you can imagine that when you are on the zenith of what you're doing, you're playing out to sold-out crowds, you're playing in New York, you're going to Britain, you're going to Germany, you're going to Japan, you're going to all these huge countries and playing, and people love you, you're winning Academy Awards after Academy Awards, you're becoming famous, you have everything set, and most of us will then think that we're going to be Police or be a part of it for the rest of our lives. That did not happen. Eventually, in 1984, Sting would say he's just going to drop everything and go solo, and that's what he did. A big risk to take, but it paid off for Sting. Born as Gordon, if he walks the street and anybody calls him Gordon, he's going to turn around and not even look at you for one reason. He just quoted himself by saying, this is not verbatim, but he's gone on to say that he's been known as Sting for the last 40 years. Why will anybody call him Gordon? And if they do, he's not going to turn around. Well, he's married to this lady who's called Trudy Styler, and together they're doing a lot of work for the planet, philanthropy to say the least. And what are they doing? Well, they have this foundation called the Rainforest Foundation. What is it set up for? For the indigenous people in the rainforest and to save the rainforests as well. And they are doing a phenomenal job. So we all know that Sting is a phenomenal bassist, but he's also an amazing singer. But do you know most about how his songs came together? Roxanne happened in a dream, and so did Every Breath You Take. Now, apparently he was staying in the house of Ian Fleming when the whole group was in Jamaica. He went to sleep, he got the lyrics in his head, he woke up in the middle of the night, he wrote the song, and today it's a gigantic hit. Well, with songs like Every Breath You Take, Roxanne, and songs that come on like 10 Sumner's Tales and then Fields of Gold, Desert Rose, you can all see the progression from different genres, but that's what he's all about. How does this happen? Well, he's got a genius in his mind. He's supposed to be one of the most richest people in the world when it comes to people who made music and then excelled from there. He's got about 17 homes right across, but he loves staying in New York for one reason. The pulse of that city seems to get him going, but he's a genius no matter where he plays. As a bassist, he's brilliant. This is Sting. Come to the end of this episode of The Chord. Catch me next week, same place, same time for more on The Chord and more on Sting.